for me, that is the peak of happiness as a DJ, right? Having my family there, other people's families, just having the time of their lives. When you're connecting with children, their parents, grandparents, teenagers, they're all singing the same song. You just can't beat that feeling because they're having so much fun.
Just through all these connections.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are around about that stage in life of, I guess, like in our 40s, having the level of maturity and just having gone through the shit.
Yeah.
And this platform was built on that, right? Like, I didn't have what it took to stick to what it is that I wanted to do. And it was a lot of just flip-flopping and a lot of uncertainty and just not really backing myself and looking up to a lot of artists and creatives that were able to just go through that shit and hammer it out. And I guess now what I'm doing is just building this platform and connecting with artists that you guys inspire me, because you know you're offering something to the communities that you're in. You've helped shape it in one way or another, and you know you just stuck it out.
Yeah. Look, I wanted to give up DJing, 12, 13 years ago. I was at that stage in my life where I was just like, what am I doing with my life? DJing wasn't going to put food on the table and pay the bills, so to speak. And I had to pivot and think about, well, what do I want to do that's going to be sustainable in the long run and what is going to be rewarding as a job. And so I decided to go back and do social work. But doing that, I still had to work to put myself through school. So I couldn't completely give up DJing. And so I still had regular gigs to pay the bills to put me through school. But, unbeknownst to me at the time, I saw it as a means to an end. But in fact, it just helped keep me going and pushing through, the times where I just felt like I was disinterested and, it was just draining. The old, cliche stories about going to DJ and having to deal with requests and difficult customers and all that. I kind of played into that narrative a bit because I wasn't in a great mindset. But once I started, going to school and arming myself with knowledge just around the world and how we interact with each other and humans and that kind of thing, it kind of changed my perspective on DJing as well. And so the fact that I can still do it now, after going through those periods of wanting to quit, I think is a testament to my own ability to persevere through those. It's like a writer's block or creative block, right? Yep. There were times where I just didn't want to search for new music, or I didn't want to look out for new artists or any of that kind of stuff. And felt really disheartened by the whole process as well, because you put so much time and effort into it, and you have these, for me anyway, you have these kind of goals and then you tick them off. Or what's next? That old saying of once you reach the top of one mountain, you're at the bottom of another. But I also had to be realistic in terms of where I was at with my craft and how I fit within, I guess, the scene. I hate using that word, but fitting within the scene and without compromising my passion for the music that I liked, right? Because oftentimes with DJing, when you get gigs, and especially when you get high-paying gigs, right, there's always a catch. Money sounds great, but then you get a set of conditions. This is what we want you to play. This is what you can play. This is what you can't play. And so as a creative, especially in the DJ world, like, well, you've booked me for the things that I've done, but now you're telling me I can't do them. But then that paycheck is really good. So they're the things you have to navigate. I really appreciate you saying that we've inspired you. When you're sitting in it, it's really hard for us to see that we are having, I guess, influence or inspiration for others. And because we've been doing it for so long, yeah. So I really appreciate when people say that to me. I really take it on board and I sit with it and take stock of the things that we've accomplished or I've accomplished over the years.
You don't, yeah, you're right. You don't see it, man. You're always battling your own challenges.
Yeah, I'm my own worst self-critic.
I do. And I kind of feel as though that should be the way as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you've got to be your own best friend at the same time.
Yeah.
And you have to, like, no one's going to hold a reality check to you than just yourself. You know, the people around you are great because you surround yourself with good people. They're going to be supportive. They're going to be encouraging. But sometimes, I mean, well, every time, a lot of the times, they just won't get what is actually happening in here and here.
No.
But you say that you went, you know, when you studied when you went back to study social work, and it gave you a different perspective and a shift in the mindset. You know, that's something that drew me to you, was that you seem to have a really a well-balanced, holistic approach to everything that you do. And what I mean by that is that you're able to apply like an understanding in one field of your life and seeing what lessons you can take from that and then apply it to another.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, the battles that you have with the social work, you're able to just then put the rest of things in perspective. And like, for example, you put up a post about having to take better care of your health, you know, your well-being, and understanding how that influences and how that will have effect on all the other parts. So yeah, like, you know, you get to a certain point, and this is what I was saying, is that you get to a point in your life where like you don't have to go full throttle in a certain area and push that. You can kind of like lean on something else and then take the lessons from that.
Absolutely.
And inject it into another area.
Yeah. What I learned over the years is, I think with any craft that you take seriously, whether it be DJing, painting, anything, right? You have these goals, lofty goals, some of it realistic, some of it not realistic. But as a young up-and-comer, what I found is we'd always try and compare ourselves to others, which has its pros and cons. So, you know, there's that old saying, work hard enough so your idols become your rivals, right? But also you balance it out with comparison's a thief of joy, right? Again, perhaps a bit cliche, but I really subscribe to that because when you stop comparing yourself to others, that's when you can focus on your own journey and really hone in and find your signature, find who you are, find what works for you. It's good you take influence from everyone else and how you want to, I guess, perform your craft or you know, show what you do. But that takes time. For me, I was never really comfortable with my skills as a DJ until the last few years.
Yeah, it does. It does take time, man.
It takes time to be comfortable and say, you know what, I'm actually never going to be as good as this person that I idolize, but I'm happy with where I'm at with this part, and this is my signature, and this is my style.
And it could be DJing, it could be whatever
Could be
pursuit.
whatever.
Any pursuit. It doesn't even have to be a creative pursuit either.
Yeah.
It's just that point in your life you have to go through all the battles, all the wars to realize, like, you know what? Shit's not that bad.
It really isn't. You know, over the years, I've chatted with lots of DJs who perhaps are starting out or on the cusp of, you know, doing bigger things, and having lots of conversations where, like, for example, I've booked them for like a local party, and they've come up to me and they're like, you know, I'm really nervous, and we're like, no, that's really good that you're nervous because it means you really care about it, but we also booked you because you're really good at what you do. So have that confidence in yourself. And from that, you know, some of these DJs that we've booked for our smaller parties are now touring, you know, whether it be internationally or nationally. That's great. I'm really happy for them. And that I was there at that journey at the beginning when they were self-doubting, and now they're here, you know, doing way more things than I've ever done, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take a lot of joy out of seeing other people succeed. And that's where I've kind of seen myself or located myself within the music scene, so to speak.
Has it always been that way?
Not always.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started out, I had maybe one or two people who believed in me. And the way I look at it and how I give back to the community is by identifying young, new up-and-comers, helping them navigate the first, few gigs or whatever it is. If they reach out, they have questions, I always try my best to answer their queries. You can imagine people look up to the Operatives, as you said, and there's a lot of inspiration there. And I have a lot of people in my DM saying, hey, put me on. First thing I say is, hi, my name is Nam. Let's get to know each other. What do you love? What brings you to DJing? And what are your goals? Short term, long term? What are you hoping to get out of this? And really unpack who the person is.
How have you seen that change over the years? Because I imagine that DJing. Oh, geez. How long have you been doing it now?
20
years.
Yeah, 24 now.
24 years.
Yeah, 24 years.
I imagine that the scene has changed significantly.
Huge. Yeah. So when I first started out, it was vinyl. So I would buy records every weekend. I had a crappy telemarketing job, and I'd spend all my money on buying records. And, records were like $20 for 2 singles, A and B side. And at the time, I was really into drum and bass, so I bought heaps of drum and bass records. To take it a little bit further back, so my passion for music started when I was a kid. One of my earliest memories of music is, and this is going to show my age, I was a kid, I'm maybe about 7 or 8. I had teenage cousins living with me who'd just come over from Vietnam. This is in the 80s. They had a turntable and they had records. When they went to school, my sister and I would run into their room, pull out ABBA, Bee Gees, Olivia Newton-John, put it on, listen to it and jump up and down dancing on their bed. So that's my earliest memory of music. So I've always loved music. As I got older and through my teenage years, that didn't really stop. And I was always searching for different underground music. I just didn't connect with mainstream music. And through the 90s, early 90s, I really liked my R&B and hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Who didn't, right? Like I was watching House Party, I was watching, Boys in the Hood, that kind of stuff. And the only way you could get that music was to go to a record store called Central Station. Right? At the time, they had a store on Flinders Street.
Yeah.
And we'd go in, I'd skip school, go to Central Station and try and buy CDs. And they had this import sticker on it because none of it was on mainstream radio. There was absolutely zero hip hop R&B anywhere on Australian TV, radio, anything like that. And then slowly over years, there was this community radio on PBS. There was one radio show from one hour on a Sunday night that I would religiously listen to and cut my own mixtapes on cassette, right? And that's how I started loving the whole idea of DJing. I'd go to underage parties at the time and I would just watch the DJs. So for me, I've always kind of gravitated towards the non-mainstream music, right? So again, fast forward to when I first started DJing, I was going back to Central Station Records and going through, shout outs to Jeanette and Frosty and Jim who used to work there, because I used to go in and hassle them for drum and bass records all the time. But yeah, I just started listening to a lot of drum and bass. I really connected with the UK underground and loved that sound, and would start going to raves and start going to the local nights that were being run by promoters here. And my friends and I would get some decks and would start kind of teaching ourselves how to mix, and would listen religiously to mix CDs. from DJs from the UK. So the only way you could get them back then was on the magazines like Mix Mag, and I can't remember the other name of the magazine, but you have to buy the magazine to get the CD.
Promo
To listen.
CD,
Yeah,
yeah.
there'd be a promo mix.
Yeah.
That's how you would get it. There was nothing like online yet at that stage. And then you'd go and watch and you'd be like, like, oh my God, how's he mixing this and that kind of stuff. And then slowly we taught ourselves and I guess we'd spend late nights just staying up after going to a gig, coming home and teaching ourselves how to DJ. And I was awful. I was so bad, but I kept doing it because I loved it. And so after a few years of doing that, of going out partying and listening to DJs and buying all the magazines and mixtapes, I had one guy who was a promoter. His name's Kevin. Shout out to Kevin Carlberg. He's still doing his thing. Offered me a slot at an event called, Jesus, it was at the SB. It was a New Year's Day event, right? But it was like in the unseen or unheard room, it was called. So for all the up and coming DJs. So obviously I was nervous as all hell, and I had to go through all my records. And at the time, you had to lug records around. They're not light; they're quite heavy. But very nervous, but did it. And I caught the bug and I wanted to keep doing it. So I used to look for open deck nights. So yeah, there used to be one at E55 on a Tuesday night.
E55, is that Elizabeth Street?
That's Elizabeth Street.
Shit, I remember that joint.
Yeah. And I'd go down there on a Tuesday night and play records just to understand, to learn how to play out in a bar. On shitty mixes. And just learning how to, I guess, troubleshoot those problems there as well. But yeah, from there, that's how it started for me and continued. But I didn't really have that many mentors as such. Yeah, so I'm happy that I'm able now to provide that for others.
What was when you said you caught the bug, what was the bug? What was the essence of that? Was it the music? Was it the atmosphere? Like what? Break that down.
Yeah. So the bug. What I mean by the bug is connecting. I think it was being able to connect with people through music, and the idea that you could cut and paste. That's a very layman's term of putting it. Cut and paste certain parts of a track and put it together to create a new sound. And having people going, "Oh, that sounds crazy," right? What I guess drew me to it at the start is very different to what it is now, but the essence of it itself is connection, human connection. So when you see a dance floor of people dancing and smiling, and that you've created that atmosphere, it's a pretty good feeling, and that's the bug, right? It's being able to connect with multiple people at the same time, people you don't know, people you do know, and I think that's what it is. It's about connection.
And it's pretty synchronous as well when you have that many people that are feeding off
Absolutely.
the same thing, feeling the same thing, and you're conducting it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty addictive, I can imagine.
It is. Yeah. It can be. And I think for a lot of people who start out, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect that I've discovered is a lot of DJs want to be able to share their work.
Right, their production work.
Their production, yeah. Which is a little bit different than you're educating the crowd.
Yeah. Okay. This is what I was speaking to you about the last time. I didn't realize the scope or the spectrum of what a DJ kind of entails, because I understood that there was a high degree of curating a crowd. I felt as though that part of that was to not just mix songs, but also just to be producing songs. But that's not really the case, is it?
No, it's not. Sometimes producers can't DJ, and sometimes DJs can't produce, right?
It's a very different discipline when I really think about it.
It is. Yeah. I was having a chat with a friend yesterday, and she's just trying to get in production now, and we were discussing how getting in production is actually almost like a new language you have to learn, right? So as a DJ, you hear all these sounds, but you don't know how it's made or the language on how it's being made, right? So I found through my experience in trying to produce, and I'm not saying that I've put in 110% into this, but in my head and in my ears, I know what sound I want to create, but I don't know how to express it or use the language or understand the software or how to get to that point, right? And that takes time.
So it's not that it will be creating the sound, whereas for you, it'll be more recognizing. You'll hear something and be like,
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
I need that ingredient.
For example, when I'm DJing, I'll hear like a loop, a drum pattern, or a sample, and I know it's going to fit well in another song.
Shit.
Right?
Is it just automatic that you can think that? Or is there like some experimentation with that?
Experimentation, but what I've discovered even over the last couple of years when I'm DJing, I'm inadvertently learning how to do wordplay, meaning like if there's a certain word in a song, I'm able to mix it into another that's connected to each other without even realizing it.
Okay.
But I think that's just subconsciously now that I've done it so much that I'm going, yep, this fits into that without even having to think about it. But that takes time. Sometimes it fails miserably, but I'm getting a better understanding of what that is now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to put this into context of a visual artist.
Yeah.
That's how I piece things together. So there's a lot of collage type artists.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be
yeah.
akin to
So
that.
DJ is like, yeah, it's cut and paste, right?
Yeah.
So you're
to
finding
create a new body of work.
Yeah, to create a new body of work. I think when you start producing, then you're heading down that path of you're creating new sounds. And I've known my friends who are producers will go and do some crazy shit like go to a playground and record the sounds on. I don't know. You know those playgrounds where they've got like a metal stick and you hit the bell. Yeah, they'll go do that and then come home, twist it, fuck it up, and make a song out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Have you met? I think we might have spoken about this. Billy Davis.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You need to talk to him. Dude's a genius.
I've asked him to come on.
Yeah, okay.
We'll catch up soon. He will. He's a busy man.
Yeah, as a producer, he's next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dude is crazy talented. But so running back to what you were saying about how sampling, James Blake. Have you heard of James Blake? Mm-hmm. Yep. So one of his first songs that he released, he has this sample. I used to play it all the time. Iconic song. This sample, it's a haunting vocal, and it took music nerds a long time to work it out. He literally took one sentence out of a Khalees song.
Oh, okay.
Distorted it, twisted it. It's like I found her red coat or something like that. That was it.
And then just like looped it back or something.
He just, whatever he did with it, it sounded so good, and it was a tune that got played religiously, and on more DJs around the world. But that's what set him on his path to.
Right.
Yeah. So what I've discovered as a DJ with producers as well, because I listen to a lot of music, is that they start off by editing some of their favorite tracks and putting it on SoundCloud, right? So they would put their own twist on a iconic tune or something, and it might go viral. So Kate Renata, I used to play all the Kate Renata stuff before he became massive, and he did like a Janet Jackson remix in like, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Put it on SoundCloud and it just blew up. Now he's just released a new album recently, has all these big names on it. He's still got his signature sound, but that's how his career started.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, because there is a bit of a fine line from creating a new sound and just basically blatantly taking someone else's.
Yeah.
So you've got to, there's going to be degrees of it.
Yeah.
But sampling something and adjusting it and adding to it and just changing the formula of it in a way that's enough to then create a new body of work.
Yeah. Yes. Well, yes. Because kind of what I've found is sometimes these producers will flip or edit or remix. And if they stay and they're really good at what they do, they end up releasing original music. it's almost like a starting point for up and coming producers. From my perspective, this is just my take on it. Could be different, from other people, but because for me as a DJ, I'm constantly searching, and I look for edits and remixes because it's not quite mainstream, right? But it still has a little bit of familiarity with the crowd. Mm-hmm. So I can drop something that has a little bit of, I don't know, like a TLC sample or something, but then it's completely different in terms of how it's been remixed.
But that'll just be part of the creative process, With producers, when you have to just start with what you know.
Yeah.
And then you start with that, and then you start tweaking it enough, and then you got a new sound, and you're like, you know what, I need something here, but I can't find it, so I'm gonna have to go create that.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's quite a wild process, and it is like, I guess that even with like visual artists, that is how you start. You take your inspirations from the people that have come before you. Yes. You start emulating their style.
Yeah.
You borrow some of the ingredients they have. You take a bit of this. I think it was, what was it? The Bruce Lee quote. Let me try to not butcher this one. It's hang on. It's a good one. It's was it like, take what you need, discard what you don't, and add what is uniquely yours.
Yeah,
and I think that is creativity.
It is. Yeah? It really is, because what I hate hearing, unless it's really blatant, what I hate hearing from people, especially in the creative, you're biting my style, you ripped off so and so. But the reality is, this is how people learn.
Yeah,
they're taking inspiration. If they're biting your style, or you feel like they're ripping you off, it's because they love what you do. Imitation, right? Mm-hmm. Biggest form of flattery. And then let that artist form their own identity through these processes that they're going through. They can't be ripping you off, identically, like everything that you're doing. They're going to be putting their own twist on it. It's going to look a lot like yours, but ultimately this is their journey, and they're either going to...
I agree, man. Yeah. And I think that it is flattery, really. Yeah. And that's what they say about imitation. Mm-hmm. But there's so much behind a body of work that you have created, or not even a body of work, but any singular piece.
Yeah.
Like you look at that one piece of work, whether it be a painting or a song or whatever type of creative expression, and what that was a build-up and accumulation of everything that's come before that, right?
Exactly.
So you have taken inspiration, whether or not you want to acknowledge it, but you have taken inspiration from every other part of your life, injected
Correct.
into this.
Yeah.
So there's so much substance behind it that you don't even you don't realize yourself.
Yeah.
And if someone was to copy that directly, it's going to be lacking that substance.
Correct.
Right? So it's not going to resonate in the same way.
Yep.
Like if a DJ or a musician was to take production off someone else completely, like it's not going to fit. It just won't.
Yep.
And what you're doing is then just adding the accumulation of all your experiences back into the pool.
Yeah.
To then for someone else to take.
Yep.
And then add their little bit in, and then we just grow and we evolve and we develop.
I've got a good story from a friend. So in regards to that kind of, where people feel like someone's biting your style or whatever. And, because often you when you're DJing, you notice that some people will listen to how you DJ and actually copy your mixes. Right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that does happen.
Yeah.
But I remember talking to a really well-respected, super talented DJ, and I spoke to him about it. He goes, "Who gives a shit? You can play the same set, just do it better." It really doesn't matter. Just because they've copied your mix, who cares? But people get a bit precious about it, but I really don't care.
If you're going to be having to play that mix in that moment, right? So because it is very much determined by what is happening right at that point in time.
Yeah.
There's also going to be an understanding of what that particular moment, what the energy level is of the crowd, and what you're going to be bringing into it. So if they were to copy it, they might not know the timing, the cadence,
Correct.
the energy. They won't
They
know
won't
where to
know.
bring it out.
No. And also, when you're at a point in your, like, I guess in your DJ career or journey, if you notice someone doing that, you don't, for me, my approach would be, guess what? I'm going to do a new mix that you've never heard of. You can keep that.
And they're stuck there because they don't have that background and
The ability to pivot and try, or having the confidence to try something new, or just not being held back by those kind of things is when you know that you've kind of like, I got this shit. Like, I've got it. I know what I'm doing. I don't have any fears.
yeah.
Yeah. But that takes time. Takes a lot of time. Because being a DJ also means that you're putting yourself up there to be scrutinized, right? So as much as you get to connect with people, you're also putting yourself out there to be criticized, right? And I've got a great story for that. Would have been like 2009 maybe. We were putting on a show with these guys called the Next Men, who are two of my favorite DJs in the world, because when I first started listening to mixtapes, these guys would actually play all genres in a mixtape. They play reggae, dub, hip hop, jungle, drum and bass, house, the lot, everything. And their mixtapes were just the hottest things, right? And I was on support for them. I'd broken my wrist at the time, but I was still DJing, and I was, the warm up in the support slot. And I was obviously very nervous, and I thought a lot about my set, and I was playing back to back with Jerry. But I finished my set, I walked off stage, and as I walked past these two dudes, they very loudly said to me, "That warm-up DJ was fucking shit."
Oh, ouch.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, as someone who's already nervous and anxious, knowing that someone was taking a full, stab at you on purpose was a little bit soul-destroying, but it certainly didn't stop me. Right? So if anything, it fueled me to get better.
Yeah, it can go in one or two ways, right?
Exactly.
Jeez.
But I remember at the time it was pretty disheartening. Well, one, I had a broken wrist, right? So I was playing with one hand. But when I reflected, I was like, well, guess what? I was up there and you weren't. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, criticism. Yeah, criticism. Yeah, I've got a bit of a strange relationship with criticism because, as we were just touching on, that you are going to be your harshest critic.
Yeah.
Sometimes, for me, definitely, I agree with you on that one, to a fault in many cases. And now I've learnt to disregard, not criticism. That I wouldn't say is criticism. That's just slander. What was dished at you. I was like, that's not going to help.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it can be disheartening. But I feel as though that if you're going to be able to be your greatest critic and also your greatest supporter, you will have that opportunity. You'll give yourself that opportunity to reflect on that. It's like, what was that about? Like, what was the underlying? What were they trying to say? Were they trying to just bring me down a peg, or were they legit? Was it fair? Was it fair what they were saying?
Yeah.
Was I actually? Did I suck? up
Yeah.
there? And if you did, then you didn't bring your A game. You couldn't with a busted arm anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that relationship of understanding when is the criticism warranted, and in a lot of cases now, like I can't hear it. I don't want to hear it. It doesn't help the pursuit of where I want to take things in my life.
Yeah.
Just having people just try to drag you down, and not that there's no one in my life that will do that. But yeah, I just don't see the value in people just slinging shit like that.
It happens. It's worse now with social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this happened to me prior to the whole social media. It was like, it was done directly to my face, but
Do you get it now?
no,
No.
no. And if I do, I don't pay any attention to it because I know my own self-worth, right?
That's the thing,
I
right?
know what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
And
But that is a battle that, that the kids up and comers in any field or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And this is what I wanted to get at with you when, just seeing how your journey from where you started to where you are now, and looking at the kids that are reaching out to you, their battles and their challenges they're facing are vastly different, right?
So different.
So, what you guys are doing would look on the surface very similar, but at its core, it's different set of challenges.
Yeah.
Whether it be even just in terms of the equipment, but fundamentally the lessons that you have taken with you, they're not going to get those, and they're going to have a different set of lessons that they're going to have to
They
learn.
do. But you know what's fundamental throughout all of this that doesn't change is not so much your skills as a DJ, but your ability to build relationships. Right? So I don't really care if someone's skills is not quite up to a set of standards that's expected if you're performing in a club or a bar, right? If you're a good person who's willing to learn, who's willing to take on feedback, who really shows a passion for what they do, then you're headed in the right direction. Yeah, that's the path to longevity in the game, right? Is building and nurturing those relationships, right? And that's a transferable skill. If you can do that within the DJ world, which is set with it's fraught with a lot of traps, right? But if you're able to build, maintain, and nurture relationships and network, you can take that into other aspects of your life and succeed, right? So the fundamental aspect of all of this is human relationships.
Yeah.
And how you conduct yourself.
You strip everything back.
Strip everything back.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. DJing is just the tool you use to connect with people, right? And I feel like I've met some really cool young up-and-coming DJs who are really on that path, and it's satisfying for me to see because that's what I want to foster and nurture, right? The ones that come in and demand or act entitled, I just know you're not going to last. I'm not going to tell you that, but your journey is going to be vastly different to someone who is open-minded, has a hunger and a passion to learn the industry, learn the craft, put the time in, put the energy in, and those people are the ones that are going to go far. Yeah.
They have different avenues now to succeed that you didn't have.
Absolutely.
Right, like you said mentorship. That wasn't something that was available to you. The connections and those relationships would have been so much harder to build because they just didn't have, those channels didn't exist. You couldn't just DM your favorite DJ.
No.
Back then, right? But now, do you find that grit and that persistence or that determination to be able to weather hardship and having the long game, do you find that it's becoming fewer and far between, or do you think that now because things are so much more accessible that it's easier for them to weather those storms?
That's a really good question. I mean, with things being so accessible nowadays, I think it gives people a false sense of security, or a false idea that it's achievable easily, like easily achieved. I don't think that's the case at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you still have to build those relationships, and they take time. And it can't just be through social media anymore, or at all, I don't think. You still have to build relationships with people. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm answering your question properly here, but
we'll get there.
Yeah, because how I built my relationships, I suppose, going through what I went through was, I really have to give a big shout out to Jerry. He's the head honcho of the Operatives. He's responsible for touring so many artists over the years that I've had the opportunity to meet, pick their brains, watch them perform, learn how they operate, and pick the parts that align with what I did to be able to stay in the game for this long. Mm-hmm. And so some of those people that he's toured, I was able to build friendships with, not just relationships, but friendships with, that I still remain in contact with to this day via, messaging and phone calls and that kind of, which is, I never thought in a million years that would happen when I first started DJing. So people that I idolize, I've become friends with, right? And sometimes, there's that saying, don't meet your heroes, but in my case, I'm so glad that I have, because they've had major influence in how I DJ and how I operate, as a performer. I think a lot of the younger generation yearn for that, but they want it to happen straight away. Those things take time to build.
It's the character building. That takes time.
It takes time, right? And there's all these new terms that are, things like clout chasing, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the kids have to contend with that. Well, am I doing this because I love it, or am I doing it because I'm clout chasing, right? So there's a little bit of, I find it a little bit strange, and that's just me probably being old. I don't like the whole clout chasing thing for me. But then when people, I guess, look at me and what I've accomplished and the people I'm friends with and the artists that I hang out with, they think that I have some kind of social capital that's really important for them to latch onto. Right. Okay. So that's how I view clout chasing. Clout chasing is building your social capital to feel important, right? Because I think sometimes DJing, people see as a glamorous life, and that you hang out with all these stars and you do all these fun things. Some of it is. For the most part, it isn't.
Yeah, a lot of the fame that you get with that's a byproduct, right?
Like, it is, yeah.
You know what I mean? That when they're chasing that notoriety, that fame, and there are reps that have to come with that.
Yeah.
And to circle back to, you're saying with Jerry, how he's curated you and a bunch of other DJs and has built this community of like-minded musicians and producers and DJs. There's a certain level of character that you need to be at. So it's not so much that it wasn't by accident that you got there. It took time, and it took a lot of, it took the reps. So once you get to that certain point, you're now mixing with a group of people that others would look up to, and they see that as clout. But for you, it's just that this is just a circle that I'm in because we all worked together to get here. You take away the fame, you take away those superficial Instagram metrics, and we're still going to be doing this. We're still going to be in communication with one another.
Yep.
Because we're doing it because we're at that level, right? Like we know what we can do, what our capabilities are.
Yeah.
And they don't, I guess the younger generation, they don't, their judgment might be clouded by some of those external metrics that we're faced with now, right? Yeah, for sure. 100%. It's interesting to see. But through that, sifting through all the clout chasers, there are some really cool, young, up-and-coming DJs that I really connect with. Yeah, cool.
Like, because their motivations are, for me, in the right place. Yeah, what's driving them, and that's where I build those connections, and help them through their journey where I can. And then at one point, they're not going to need me to. They're not going to come to me. They're going to go further than that.
And then they're going to be where you're at now.
Yeah.
Then they're going to.
That will surpass me. There's a lot of the young kids out there who are incredible. And you know, I know that I can then provide or share information with them, share knowledge to a certain point. And if they have the drive to go further than that, and then there's some really cool cats out there that are.
And it really just depends on what it is that they're looking for as well. It's
Yeah.
very easy for the younger generation to say that, look, I want that, right? I'm chasing that. But then as they're working towards whatever that looks like, you know, they start to learn different things along the way. It's like, you know what? The things that I need to do to get to this point, I don't necessarily want. I actually want to kind of go over here.
Yeah.
So I want to take the lessons that I've learned up until here and then pivot and move this way. And it's interesting because I guess that, you know, you have these goals that get you going, right? That just get things moving. And then as you're moving, all these other things are happening to you along the way. And then as they're happening, you realize that goal that I set 5 years ago, actually, that's not for me anymore. You know, I've you know, whether it be family or a different career, a different creative interest, maybe, you know, you kind of just move and you pivot with whatever life throws at you as well.
Yeah, I remember when I first started out DJing, I wanted to be a club DJ. Like I wanted to be DJing every weekend. I thought that, you know, I'd be able to make decent money from it. But the reality is, like when you're first starting out, that's just, it's you have to really work hard to get there, right? You have to, and at the time there were a lot more nightclubs around too. Like now it's a little bit less. I wanted to be a full-time DJ. I knew that I wouldn't be a touring DJ at the time, but I wanted to be a full-time DJ. And that was one of my goals. And it was hard. I had to do a lot of shitty bar gigs, but I used that as, the way I looked at it was I was getting paid to practice. Right? So I do all the shitty bar gigs. And then after I'd done it for a few years, I realized that, you know what, I'm worth more than this. So I started shedding those smaller bar gigs and only taking certain gigs for a certain amount of money. And this is where you have to start learning about the business as well. And I don't think there's any, not that I know of anyway, but like a school or information on how DJs navigate through these different parts of the business. To become a working DJ, become a touring DJ, a producing DJ, they're all quite different.
Okay.
And I had to learn that the hard way, right? Because I did the Summadayze, and this is all through Jerry. Again, my association with the Operatives has helped me get these gigs, right? But, you know, I did Summadayze, I did Good Vibrations back in the day, I did Stereosonic, I did Rainbow, and they're the gigs that I was able to play my sound, like what I like to hear, and the audience connected with it. But to do all the club gigs, you had to adhere to what the club, you know, restrictions or conditions were. So it's a little bit different, but I could think of way worse jobs to do for less money than playing music to a bunch of people, right?
It's not always going to be glamorous, man. That's
the reality. Yeah,
that's the reality. You got your bread and butter.
Yeah. So I learned through the years, you know, and I pivoted from having these goals of doing festivals, which I did, tick them off. You know, they're the goals that I had, and I ticked them off. And then I was like, well, how can I continue to make some kind of living from this? And that's when I learnt that I had to treat myself as a business, right? I'm the brand, I'm the business, so I'm the director of my company. How do I start monetizing this properly? Because those festival gigs are far and few in between. Summer season ends, winter is dead, right? You're not going to get those supporting slots. You're not going to get those big events that you're going to get. So, you know, learning things like creating your own ABN and registering yourself as a sole trader. And this is where COVID really hit all the DJs that I know, because none of them had done their taxes. And they weren't eligible for any of the supports.
Right.
It's like, well, you got to treat yourself like a business.
That's a underlying conversation that that seems to be a topic that comes up when speaking with a lot of these creatives.
Yeah.
Is it's not even what you're saying at the foundational level. You have to set that up and have that business acumen, that business mindset.
Yeah.
But even after that, how do you grow individually and how you grow as a person, as a creative, but then also as a business, right? There's all these strategic parts and components that have to click in together. And there's not many people that give that enough attention.
No, they don't.
Yeah, it's a tough one because you're also thinking in a very different way.
Yeah.
As well. So it is strategic. It's how do you turn what you do into just to be financially stable without compromising the integrity of what it is that you're actually doing. It's a balance. It's a balance, and it needs a lot of attention.
Yeah. If you aren't comfortable, and a lot of artists when they first come up won't compromise their artistic integrity for the sake of money because it's, what's fueling them is their passion for what they do. But you still got to eat, right? Let's break it down. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Food, shelter, water, all that stuff, right? You can't create if you don't have food and water.
We're in a pretty luxurious position because the whole creating thing is it's really just a tip, isn't it?
It is.
The top part of it all.
Yeah. Shout outs to everyone who's been able to do it without having to compromise. Yeah, there's one particular artist that comes straight to the front of my mind who's been able to do that and achieved critical success, in my opinion, and that's Flying Lotus.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know we've spoken about Flying Lotus before, but this is an artist from LA that Jerry worked with, when he first came out in 2006. And the one thing I can say about him, he's never ever sold out on anything.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's won a Grammy for the things that he's done. He's worked with Thundercat, he's worked with Kendrick Lamar, and he's still the same dude that we all met in 2006 that he is now.
2006. How long's Flying Lotus been going about? When did I? Probably around about that time actually, when I became familiar with the work.
He came here for Red Bull Music Academy, and he played at Laundry Bar for $50.
Laundry.
Yeah, laundry. Yeah, but for people, every Flying Lotus that makes up there's a lot more people who are sitting here, right? And it's about how to navigate that and still make it workable for you. And I think a lot of DJs struggle with that these days.
Yeah, man. That's just it's a common thread that keeps creatives together.
Yeah.
But it's also not a one size fits all. So you can't really just take advice from one person and that worked for them and saying that this is how it should be done. It's like, well, that's how it worked for them. Right? There's a whole bunch of factors that play into that. A lot of luck, a lot of chance, opportunities that came that you're not going to get. All these things come into play. So it's just a matter of taking that information in and just putting it in the back of your mind. So when situations arise, that you know when to draw those cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is just a game that you're constantly going to find challenges that will come up that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah. You know how when I said before that, I started off being really connecting with underground music, not from mainstream. Where I've made most of my money, though, is mainstream. Because that's where I get paid. Yeah. I get paid a lot, and I know I do it really well.
I mean, it's a reason why it exists, right?
It's called mainstream for a reason, right? So, but that funds my passion. That means I can take it on. If this is paying me this amount of money, doing these gigs that, I don't hate it. Don't mind it, but it pays me a lot more than the other one does.
I mean, shit, you could be doing worse things.
Exactly. But it funds the other things that I love doing. So I can take on the gigs that pay less.
Yeah, and you just take away from it what you want as well. So you can, you could see it as compromising your creative integrity, or you could see it as a way of funding your creative integrity.
Exactly. It's a narrative you choose, right? So... for me, being able to do things like if I didn't play or mix mainstream music, I wouldn't be able to have done something like, the Supercross Championships at Marvel Stadium. which is huge. Like for me to be able to play, for me to say like 20 years ago, if I'd said to myself, my younger self, you're going to be playing at the Supercross Motorbike Championship at Marble Stable in front of 20, 30,000 people, right? And that was on like their first day or something. And I was there for a whole 9 hours. That's a long day, but I never thought I would be in that position. That DJing put me in that position, right? Which is incredible.
And then also when you know, as you doing mainstream work, that's when you're being exposed to a larger group of
Wide
people.
audience,
yeah. And then that's where you put yourself out there.
Correct.
That's how you start creating a name for yourself.
Yeah. Like for me, when I reflect on that moment, it's like, I'm a kid from the Richmond Commission Flats. How did it end up at Marvel Stadium? So I feel pretty blessed, but I've also worked really hard to get to where I am. You know, even being able to do things like, probably one of my favorite gigs of all time is playing at the National Gallery of Victoria. Okay. So coming out of COVID, you know, the government was putting money back into the arts and really trying to get people out and about, get the creatives going again. And I remember seeing an opportunity popping up. They were asking for people to apply. And I remember ringing Jerry, and we've got to do this. We've got to, you know, hey, this thing's happening at NGV. They want DJs. And, you know, put us forward. And he did. And he got us, the whole Operatives crew, a residency there for like 4 weeks through summer of 2021, I think it was.
Wow.
And because they'd set up this glass box at the front entrance and we got to play our style of music. We didn't have to subscribe to any, you know, conditions.
They're good like that, the NGV.
They let you flex your creativity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they kind of have to, right?
Right? You know.
Were you playing to a backdrop of art?
No.
Was this in the foyer area?
This is right at the front entrance.
As an inside?
Outside.
Oh, right.
As people were walking in, lining up. It was a triennial exhibition, right?
Yep.
And I had so much fun. You know, I was able to bring my son to it. To be able to do that is pretty cool. And we got paid, you know, really well, and we got looked after. And to be able to say that you played at the NGV growing up here is pretty big for me. Again, not something I thought I would do as a DJ, is to perform at the National Gallery of Victoria. So I thought that was really cool. But all of that stuff is a lot of hard work, because I'm sure there would have been so many people who applied.
For sure.
But our body of work spoke for ourselves, and we were able to, you know, Jerry is a big part of that. And yeah, I feel, again, incredibly blessed to have been able to do that.
Yeah, so it, like you said, man, it comes down to reps and the relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and just having the opportunities to not just do your thing, but also just to show your character, who you are.
Yeah.
And the more of it that you're able to present, the more opportunities you're able to present, and then you're able to then create trust in the community that you're legit. You're here to stay. Yeah. That you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
And you know, you're not going anywhere.
It's all about, like I said earlier, I know I keep banging on about it, but it's building those relationships. Yeah. And nurturing them, fostering them, understanding the importance of it as well. That's how I've been able to continue to do what I do. And when something comes up, my name gets put forward. Learn how to be professional, be punctual, all of that stuff. Have that instilled in how you operate, and I guarantee you'll get opportunities. It's
just part of that character, right?
Yeah.
Like you start chipping away at things. You remove the shit that just doesn't work for you. And you start building up the things.
Yeah.
You know, start creating that integrity.
Yeah.
Within yourself.
Absolutely. Like I said, you are your brand. You're the director. Treat yourself like your business, and think about how you'd like to treat yourself if you were your own worker, right? Like put that value on yourself.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what the message is. Put that value on yourself. and learn how to do that. That's a process. That is because I didn't know. I had to go through a lot of setbacks and taking on lots of, gigs that I shouldn't have said yes to, and just understanding my value. I'm now comfortable in saying no to opportunities because, one, I have the luxury. Two, I know my self-worth.
Yeah, and it's opportunity cost as well, man. Like if you're going to be taking that, you've also got to think if you're taking up an opportunity, you're saying no to something else as well, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
with your time, there's value in that.
Yeah.
And what is it that it's going to ultimately cost you?
Yeah, exactly.
When you talk about your brand, your personal brand, and I know that's not something that you necessarily give much attention to, you just operate as yourself and you just be as genuine as you can. With these up and coming DJs, do you feel as though that they have to have a brand? Because it's such a surface thing going on at the moment, and with all creative pursuits, it's about the person as much as it is about the work.
I think in this day and age, you can't, especially in the DJ world, you have to. Like, it just comes part and parcel now. It didn't used to be. Like, in this day and age, when people say, hey, I think this person's a good DJ, and they've met you, they go, what's their Instagram handle? Right? What's their TikTok? They want to look at your body of work. That's your brand.
So you have to be in a position where, like, you have the maturity of someone like yourself, but have the social media presence of a 20-year-old.
Yeah, essentially. So you have to learn, and this is, again, I'm still learning this because the journey never stops, but learning how to, because a lot of times with DJing, and it's with modeling as well, anything, right? In this day and age, they look at your socials to see what your body of work is. And as a DJ, we all know DJs have usually a pretty heavy social media presence because that's how they get themselves out there.
Is Instagram the main one?
I think for me, I would say Instagram. I don't have TikTok, but I know TikTok's pretty huge. But how that translates into gigs, I'm not too sure.
Do they bother with like SoundCloud? Would they?
I like to think they do.
Yeah.
When people do booking, they check someone's SoundCloud. But I can guarantee you, the people that I speak to, when they say, "Can you book me for gigs?" Okay, can you send me a mix of what you've done so I can listen to it? I'm not going to book you off your Instagram.
Okay.
Clips
so then
or
you just
whatever.
send them the SoundCloud links.
Sometimes they don't have any, or that they've only done one or two. And for me, it's like looking at someone's CV. Well, why should I book you then? I haven't seen you perform. You've only got one mix up there. What else have you got? And the best way to improve as a DJ, and I tell this to all DJs, record yourself. You don't have to post it, but record yourself so you can have a listen, go back and say, oh yeah, I could do that bit better. Right?
Yeah.
So you can't change what you can't track. So if you're DJing and you want to know if you're improving or not, don't rely on your friends. Record it. Have a listen to yourself.
And be your own worst or best critic.
Yeah. Like, find the spots where you think you can improve on. I still do that to this day. All right. So when I record a mix, I'll listen to it over and over again. And then I'll go, oh, yep, this is where I could have done better. Yep, I might go back and record this bit. Or, and then I might send to one or two people. But I also know in this day and age of instant gratification and short attention span that people don't have the capabilities of sitting down and listening to someone's hour-long mix anymore, whereas I used to, right? When I first started DJing, I just listened to DJ mixes all the time because that's how you learn. That's how you pick, I'm going to try and do that mix. Or I'm going to try and copy that part or work out, how did they do that? They must have had a third deck playing at the same time, that kind of thing. And I don't think any of the DJs really do that anymore.
Really?
Yeah. So there's this crew out of LA called Selection, which are huge now. Massive. Great branding. They do Selection Radio. And I think a lot of kids listen to the radio show. And sometimes they'll have guest DJs on there and that kind of thing. and that's where they may get the inspiration from. But I encourage them to look elsewhere. Yeah. Find which DJ you really idolize based on their skill set, on their song selection, and you'll see that those DJs who have that will have a big body of work online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you go listen, you go watch their YouTube or see how they're doing transitions or that kind of thing. I really encourage all the younger DJs upcoming to do that.
I mean, you have to, man. You just got to be a sponge, really.
You do,
and you have to analyze and you got to dissect.
Absolutely, but I just don't see this, and it could be because I don't obviously see it in person, but it just doesn't feel like that same amount of work is being put in, right? And so if you want to have longevity in the game, you got to put the work in and really understand your craft.
Yeah. That, man, dude, that just goes with anything.
Anything.
Right? Like you go ask any of the greatest in whatever field it is, whether it be even sports, let alone creative pursuits, they will always credit the people that came before them.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
studied all that.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a matter of just taking what is useful, discarding what's not, and then just adding what is your own.
Yeah.
That has to be the ethos. That has to be like the staple with how things progress creatively.
Like so just stepping back with the whole SoundCloud links, I actually find it quite funny that when I ask people for mixes, they just either don't have any, or it's like, but you're asking me to put you on, but I've got to see why.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Then how did you how do you think this was going to go?
Yeah. So again, I just really want to re-emphasize that it's really important for aspiring young DJs to record yourself. Learn to practice on equipment that is used in clubs. Because I find a lot of kids have trouble. Like they start off, they got this little controller at home as well, and they think they know. Then you put them in front of a club setup and they're just like, what do I do?
Why would you not have that set up? Would it just be an expense thing?
100%. I don't have it.
Okay.
It's so expensive. It's like $10K for like, two industry standard, CDJs and a mixer. So I don't expect any up and coming bedroom DJs to have that kind of setup unless you got the money. But there's places you can go and rent and learn. I've had a few DJs that I've spoken to that they did that. I think fantastic. Okay. Money well spent. Or turn up and support your favorite local DJs and watch and learn.
Hey, tell me what it's like, that feeling, because you were saying at the motocross, the supercross, 20,000 people. What is that feeling like? Or describe to me before you step out on stage. You can see the crowd. You're about to then feed off the crowd. Describe that, man.
Look, in the context of the motocross, obviously I wasn't the main attraction.
Or any sort of scenario, because I've seen these clips of you when it's like behind the scenes, you're about to step out to perform. Like just
it's for me, it's a pretty amazing feeling. In the context of the Marvel one, the Supercross Championships, it was like I had to pinch myself because I was on this big stage. I was the only DJ on there. And just the whole setup, like these bikes, the smell of petrol, people were so far away as well. You don't have the same intimate connection as you would in a small club, but it's still like, this is incredible. This is what it's like to perform in a stadium, the energy, the crowd and cameras everywhere. And like, you're really like, you're in the spotlight. And that felt like a big accomplishment because again, I mean, like,
playing on a stadium.
I'm in a stadium, in Marvel Stadium DJing. And then one of my favorite gigs is actually at Morty Fest. So every summer, Morty Alec have a festival for families. And it's so wholesome because there's families, there's kids, teenagers. I closed out the Sunset stage last year and this year, and they'll have me back every year as long as they're going. I hope so. But it's just so family friendly. My son came last year and he had the best time, and it's like, that's my dad up there, right? And I get to play a lot of family friendly songs. Everyone dances, sings, and that to me, you can't beat that, right? When you're connecting with children, their parents, grandparents, teenagers, they're all singing the same song. You just can't beat that feeling because they're having so much fun. And you know that in that environment, it's not about the alcohol. It's not about the drugs. They're not under the influence. It's about having fun with your family. So for me, and this is not going to be very deep for me, that is the peak of happiness as a DJ, right? Having my family there, other people's families, just having the time of their lives. You know, it was so good last year that this year, before I even started, there was a young family with 2 young boys sitting at the front waiting for me to start, and they were waving at me.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. Those moments, like, you treasure those moments, right? You cherish them, because these are going to be core memories for these kids.
Yeah.
You know, and this could be something. Oh no, I'm thinking a bit ahead of myself, but it could be that this is what they want to do when they get older.
For sure, dude.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
and you hear those stories all the time,
right? So I think it's great, and I also think for the teenagers, for the youth, it's great for them because they want to go out and party, but they're not quite that age to go to a club, but they get to come to this family friendly event and dance their heart out like they're at a festival.
Yeah, it's got that vibe.
It's got that vibe, and it's wholesome, and there's no trouble. It's like everyone's well behaved, and it's great. I love it.
You just reduce it all down to the essence of it, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just connecting with people through music. It's a universal language, no matter where you are in the world. It speaks to people.
Dude, it really does. And I've been thinking about this. Now, knowing that I was going to speak with you, and it's like, the music and that creating an atmosphere where you don't have to necessarily have made the music. You're curating the music. You're curating the crowd. You're curating the energy. And it just goes back to tribalism. Like it goes all the way back before we even had language. I'd imagine there was music, right? Like someone just was tapping, and at a tempo, like, ooh, this, there's something here. I'm feeling something. You go at a certain tempo and you feel one thing. You change the tempo, you feel something else, and then someone, the other caveman would just be like, what's this? What's this? And all of a sudden, people are just coming around. They're standing. They're just sitting around the fire.
Yeah.
They're tapping away, and then they start moving, and they're like, "This feels good."
Yeah.
Right. Like there's something really deep seated in us as humanity to come together as a community to music.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
No matter what language it's in, like, there's always going to be some people who are going to connect with it more than others, but essentially, no matter where you go in the world, there will be some song that you have in common with another person. Always. And I think that is what I love about DJing. Yeah. Like just that ability to connect with people through music. I take pride in, as I said earlier around the Brazilian music, I take pride in being able to play. Again, I'm not saying I'm an expert at it. I'm not. I have some knowledge around Brazilian music. I don't know everything about it. But the knowledge I do have comes from one of my idols, right? His name's DJ Marky. When I first started DJing, he had released a CD called The Brazilian Job. So he's from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And I listened to that CD religiously. Like, I hammered it, absolutely hammered it, because his song selections and his mixing skills were just incredible. And Jerry toured him, did his tour in Australia, and I got to meet him. And we became friends. And he shared with me his knowledge of Brazilian music. He would give me just a file of old Brazilian disco music, and he would show me the original song he used for a sample for one of his hits and that kind of thing. And so I went into a deep dive and, really explore and understand and, really study the music. So, and this was like, 17, 18 years ago that I gained this knowledge. And here we are years later, the Brazilian community.
Just rallying around you.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to have been born into that culture to get it.
Yeah. Look, there are some things that I have to be aware of when I play music from a different culture if I don't understand the language, and that is the lyrics sometimes.
True.
Yeah. When you're playing classic disco funk and that kind of stuff, it's not going to be offensive. But, there are certain Brazilian songs that are coming out that are for the new age, and songs that are being produced from favelas and that kind of thing, where they are talking about real life.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
And if you don't understand the lyrics, they can be, and when you do understand, they can be quite either sexist, misogynistic, or homophobic, right? And as a DJ, you have to understand that.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you start playing songs that are offensive and they understand Portuguese, then you'll be accused of culturally appropriating.
Yeah, then that's being ignorant. That is it's bordering on being ignorant.
It's a bit problematic, but I try to educate myself.
Learning Portuguese?
Well, no. If I don't understand the lyric to the song, then I'm not going to play it.
Yeah.
Or find an instrumental version of it. Right? But then there are some songs that when it translates, quite offensive, but some parts of the Brazilian community really connect with that. And they'll love it when you play it.
Okay.
So again, it's about picking and finding the spot when to do it and when not to do it. So it's really, that's where, what I mean when I go into a deep dive of the genre or the music from a culture, you really got to understand what it is that you're playing.
Of course.
It's a little bit like if you're playing, in this day and age, it's no longer appropriate for people to come up to me and ask me to play, Kanye and Jay-Z's In Paris.
Yeah.
But it happens. People who shouldn't be using that word are doing it still. But that's about an education thing.
I mean, you set your boundaries as well, right? As a creative artist, you say that, no, this is not something that I want to align myself with.
Correct.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't be using that word. But if you do it in a way that's educating, then it's fine, right? But yeah, there's some of the other things that you kind of have to work with as a DJ, especially when you're playing music from another country or culture. I know we're kind of veering off a bit here, but
no, I get it.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, that knowledge I gained from DJ Marky has, it's kind of come full circle. Like, last year, Luara actually flew me up to Sydney to play at one of her Brazilian parties.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does organise a bunch of events. We're just chatting about it the other day, actually.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. I played at the first two in Brazos, and then she flew me to Sydney for that one, the Sydney one. But yeah, I just really enjoy playing music from all cultures. Yeah, so in my sets where I get to flex my creativity, I'll play a little bit of everything from around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice, man. It's like with Brazilian, it kind of goes, it feels as though that it fits with what you're trying to create, right? Like it feels still quite tribal with a lot of the percussion.
Yeah, absolutely. The drums, rhythmic, like it's...
Yeah.
I love watching Brazilian culture, like Carnival, that kind of thing, and they're just such musical people that I really connect with, like the samba, just all the drums, the rhythm and the beat. That's the symbolic of their heartbeat.
Ah, cool.
Of their nation, of their people. I remember watching this documentary about samba and like Brazilian music and how it's so percussive and rhythmic, and it's sometimes it can just be drums and and that dates all the way back, like you were saying earlier, right, in terms of like cadence. That dates all the way back, drums,
rhythmic. To the indigenous.
Yeah. So music is when you go on a deep dive, it's actually a pretty special journey to go on. And if you really want to understand it, that's how you become authentic in what you do when you DJ.
Yeah, it's humbling, huh?
It is. You have to understand the history. You have to really learn and educate yourself about music, because that's when I think you work out how to be authentically yourself and you're not just a carbon copy of something else. Right? Understand what it is that you're doing. That took time for me to work out.
Yeah, and why? Like, why is it done in that particular way? Don't just take it for what it is. Just try to understand how that ingredient fits into the bigger picture of things.
Absolutely.
As well. And then, and to what you were saying, then that kind of helps contextualizes the culture.
Yeah.
And all the different ingredients of that particular culture and what it's representing, and then you just take that with you, and then you just create your own body of work around that.
Talking about like authenticity or being an authentic self, a lot of the times, and this is I think for most creatives, that journey of self-discovery, or what is your identity, what constructs your identity, what makes you who you are, because people will connect with you if they can feel your authenticity, if they can feel you're authentic, right?
Yeah.
For me, I'm Vietnamese Australian, grew up in the flats, surrounded by, a multicultural community from a very young age. But then when we moved out of the flats into a more white neighborhood, I kind of, I guess, lost touch or disconnected with my Vietnamese identity. And then growing up, I felt the need to connect with, I guess, the area that I grew up in, which is predominantly white or middle-class Australian. And so I found solace in, I guess, R&B and hip-hop because of the struggles a lot of the artists would be singing or rapping about, right? Because what they talked about is their struggles a lot of the times. And so that's where I connected, and that's how it kind of connected for me, because this is how I grew up. And then in these songs, they talk a lot about, the struggles in living in the hood and that kind of stuff. And so some of the cultural struggles are quite similar in that sense. But as I'm getting older now, I'm actually trying to reconnect more with my Vietnamese past. Yeah, because that's me as well. And so the last couple of years has been a bit more around what's happening in Vietnam, what's the music scene like, what's going on there. And I tell you what, it is incredible to see what's coming out of Vietnam in terms of just the hip-hop R&B scene.
Right.
It is wild.
So is this just happening now, or is it...
It's been... When I was in Vietnam in 2013 and I DJed for a friend of mine who lives there, I'd already started seeing the beginnings of a burgeoning hip-hop scene, because I saw some local cats, performing in Vietnamese, which to me was completely foreign, right? I grew up with my parents watching and listening to Vietnamese musicians or artists, but most of their songs were very sad and grief around war, separation, and that kind of thing. So it wasn't happy. It wasn't joyful music. It's certainly not something I would DJ, right? But that was my understanding of Vietnamese music.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because at that
Reflection of the time, yeah, of course.
And now, dude, it's so different.
For sure, because the kids that would have come up from a different era. They're not
totally.
Yeah, they're not part of the war.
Yeah, they've been fed, Western culture.
Of course.
They're flipping it, making their own.
I'm gonna go check this out.
Yeah, I'll send you some stuff.
Yeah.
It is. I think I'm going to be going there in end of August, start of September, perhaps. I'm trying to link up with some of the cats there, and I really want to get to know them and understand like what their motivation is, what their influences are. Like I'm watching them going, this is incredible. Like these guys are amazing. And then there's this online YouTube / social media called Colors. I don't know if you've seen it, but they go around the world, find artists and do a YouTube, like a song or whatever it is, and put them on, their socials and that kind of thing. And they shone a spotlight on Vietnam a couple of years ago and introduced me to all these new Vietnamese artists I'd never heard of, producers, rappers, singers, and they're massive.
Wow.
And I had no idea.
Cool.
But that's just me trying to reconnect with my past or who I am.
Yeah, I hear you, man. In a lot of ways, my story has a lot of similarities with that as well. It's like, when you come in here as an immigrant, you do the things that you need to do to assimilate, right? As a matter of survival. So, yeah, no, I'm largely, for the early years here, was largely disconnected with my Malaysian heritage. Yeah, I could speak Malaysian, Chinese. Like that was my first language, right? So I moved here when I was 4, but Chinese was my first language. Yeah, and I intentionally, I guess, ignorantly, forced it out. Yeah, and I can't speak it anymore. My parents put me through the weekend schools for years, and I just refused to get into it, and I deeply regret feeling that I had to hide it. That there was, I guess maybe some shame, but a lot of it was just more like you don't want to be too different, and
I went through the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were different. Yeah, we were different. So now the kids, at least, they are embracing their differences. They're celebrating their differences, whereas for our generation was trying to hide the fact. But we just looked different, right? So there was no hiding that, but we did everything else we could to not be different. Yeah,
because for me, just like you, I just wanted to fit in, but having children, having an 8-year-old son who really wants to get in touch with his Vietnamese identity is helping me reconnect, right? And also, I just want to point out, like through my years as a DJ in Melbourne, I can't think of very many Vietnamese Australian DJs.
Okay.
There's a couple. I know Dave Pham, he's one of the best techno DJs in Melbourne. He's been around for a long, long time. I've got my friend Phil, or otherwise known as Swerve. He's Vietnamese as well, and he's more doing the same things that I'm doing. But when I first started out, there weren't many. There weren't many at all. And even now, I don't see very many who are up there, who can be set the example for the next generation. Because I know there's heaps of Vietnamese kids who want to go out there, but
well, you're the one. You're the guy.
Yes and no.
I mean, it needs to start somewhere, right?
It does have to start somewhere, but it also means I have to really link in because I'm not really linked in with the Vietnamese community. So I think that's, I guess, part of my next journey is reconnecting and understanding and I guess just being that person that I didn't have. Yeah, so to anyone out there who's,
I hear you, man.
Yeah. Especially in an Asian household where your parents really push education as the path forward to financial freedom and stability in life. They look at creative ventures as hobbies more so than they do as a career. Now, if you're able to explain to your parents, that there is opportunity, that there is chance to make a living and live comfortably and that kind of thing, then it's going to be a different story, right?
Yeah.
And if you can show, well, this person's doing it, then they have an example. And I hope I can be that person, because it's not impossible. It is possible to have a creative life, and it is possible to go against the grain and still be a good human being. I think for you and I, perhaps, as we're a bit of the older generation, our parents were a little bit more their decision making was a bit more fear based, or no, because this is going to happen if you don't do that and that kind of thing. Whereas nowadays, I think we have a little bit more flexibility in allowing the next generation to pick and choose their path.
Yeah.
And be supported to do so.
Yeah, well, I mean, a bit different for me. I'm very fortunate to have, very supportive. I mean, they moved here because they wanted me to have opportunities that weren't afforded to them.
Yep.
So it was different. Like I think it was more of a spoilt for choice sort of situation for me.
Yeah.
And but no, I agree for the most part that is the mentality. It was a mindset of scarcity. And work was work as a matter of survival. Yeah. So that's all they knew, and then that is what they passed on. Generally speaking, of the generation before us, not just the Asian migrants, but also European.
Yeah.
You know, they came to Australia for opportunity for the next generation, but found it hard to separate their ideals versus what they wanted for their kids. And so it's a matter of then just having to let go and to say, look, we came here to give you opportunities that we couldn't have. Yeah. So we want you to go out and find it. Yeah. So it is up to our generation to present to the next generation and to make them aware of how fortunate they are of their situation. You do have opportunities. You can just about do whatever you want, but there are certain things that you have to be working on. And to what you were saying, you've got to have the character. You need to build your character, and you need to establish the relationships, the proper connections, the deep-seated connections that is based on character.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Dude, so where are you playing at the moment? Because you got your residencies?
Yeah, I've got my residencies. At Section 8. I've got Lucky Cock. I've got Club Retro. I've got what else? Got the Joint. I've got they're the main ones that I play at regularly. I don't advertise those ones. So as a DJ, there are ones that you do promo and the ones that you don't. Mm-hmm. So this is where I've worked out what my balance is, right? As a working DJ and then as a performing DJ as well. So I've actually been invited, and this is through Jerry again, to a music conference in Bali in September. I think it's the Asian something music conference, where I'll get to DJ as well, which will be pretty cool. Again, through DJing and music, these opportunities.
So there you go. You're connecting with the Asian roots. Just establishing yourself in APAC now. So that'll be good. But they're my residents at the moment. Obviously, off the top of my head, I can't think if I've got anything else coming up that is like an event or an artist touring. But that will be happening pretty soon. This is our 20th year as the Operatives, and I've been a part of the Operatives for at least 17 of those years. So there'll be some big parties being announced soon. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So people can connect with you on Instagram?
Yes, Operative Nam. That's my Instagram handle. I use mainly Instagram. I don't really look at Facebook anymore, and I'm not on TikTok. And I don't use Twitter. I scroll through Threads, but that's about it. Yeah.
Man, this was an awesome conversation, dude. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing all this. The knowledge and the wisdom.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been good. It's been great to connect with you, Wayne. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my story.
Thanks,
I really enjoyed it.